Hello everyone, welcome back to the Unfiltered Historian, and we haven't been on for a little while because we've been doing some stuff offline, but now we're going to come to the most important spot on the revolutionary battlefield, and to explain this is Tim and Tyler.
Why don't you take hop out. Yep. Alright, so again, welcome. Some of you guys may have seen us do a video here before, about a year ago, roughly.
Oh, was it this year? In the winter, I think.
Whenever.
Anyways, we were here recently.
We were here relatively recently, so we are at Surrender Field. We're about 2.5 miles outside of Yorktown, east of Yorktown. This is a location that the Americans formed up at and received the formal surrender of the British, the actual laying down of arms. So if you, we'll move up this way, and actually as we pass, this thing I'll point out because there is no sign if you ever come here. I wouldn't want you to miss it. This area right here, you can see maybe the dips, ridges. This is a Union battery from the Civil War. Only one battery opened up during the 1862 siege. It was not this one. Pretty much all the batteries were completed, and then the day after they were completed, the Confederates withdrew that evening. So a lot of effort went into building these. As you mentioned, or as I mentioned, if you saw my video a few months ago on Battery 12, a lot of effort to build these, to put the artillery, to build the magazines, move the ammo, and then never got to use them. So imagine how frustrated they would have been. But yep.
Okay, so as we walk up to this important location, fill us in on the build up to this point, please, Tim.
Okay, so the siege begins late September, early October. October 5th, the Allies build the first siege parallel. Once that's completed, they open the bombardment. Lasts for, nearly 2 weeks. Second siege parallel begins a few days after, around about October 9th. It's completed the night of October 14th. The Americans and French capture readouts 9 by the French and 10 by the Americans. The night of October 14th, October 15th, the British try a face-saving sortie with about 350 men. They spike a couple guns. They're quickly put back into action, lose 8 men killed. The next day, they try another face-saving attempt to escape across the York, but are interrupted by a storm. At that point, the British commander, General Lord Cornwallis, decides or comes to the conclusion that he has no choice but to surrender. The surrender is conducted at the Morehouse, just to the... We are south of Yorktown right now. This Morehouse is just to the east inside the American lines. They come to terms on the 19th of October, which here in Yorktown we refer to as Yorktown Day. The British march out of their fortifications, the inner defense line, where we were earlier and filmed earlier, and march out here, once again about 2 miles outside of town. The Americans were formed up. We'll point out the road a little bit later. In here, General Charles O'Hara, the commander of the Foot Guards, presents his sword the sword of Cornwallis to George Washington, who, acknowledging that he is not the peer of Charles O'Hara, refuses to take the sword and refers him to his second in command, Benjamin Lincoln. That's also a slight, in a way, because a year earlier, Benjamin Lincoln had surrendered the major American city and fortress, basically, of Charleston. So that was a little redemption for Lincoln. You can imagine what he must have felt. And that essentially ends the American Revolutionary War, or American War of Independence, as I prefer to call it.
And there's a few skirmishes after, isn't there? But
yeah,
but
this is...
of anything major? Or...
This was the loss of a second field army. And at this point, the public support for the war in Britain is nearly obliterated.
And so now we're on the road to the treaty in Paris. Yes?
Yep, we're on which will be signed in 1783, and then the war is officially over. The British will evacuate New York at that point. Loyalists in America will then flee, mostly to Canada.
Right.
Some stay, of course.
Within 25 miles of Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in America. On this field, it might be said, the United States of America was born.
That's horse manure in the middle of the.
Oh wow!
No.
Goosebump time.
So yeah, looking at this, the area between the Virginia snake fences would have been lined by the American troops. The British would have marched up, come around, stacked arms on the field.
And again, that famous painting, is that painted in this? So
Yes.
that's captured in this field, yeah.
So should we say anything now about the trophies?
You certainly should.
Yeah, let's take. I want you to see it. Oh, it's not bad.
And you can see if you want to zoom in for the different quotes. Washington's official note is very simple. And you can say he's very simplistic. I basically captured Yorktown. And then if you flip the other side, it's literally the opposite. It is actually more wordy, where Cornwallis reports to the king that he's mortified that he is before the
Soldiers
surrender.
of General Charles Lord Cornwallis's army surrendered their arms and regimental flags.
It's also kind of worth noting that Cornwallis actually has a distinguished career. Both before Yorktown, he's very aggressive earlier in the war, and very aggressive in the Southern campaign in the year leading up to Yorktown. But after the war, he commands in India, is a governor in India, and he commands against the Irish Rebellion in 1798. So he has a very long career that extends past Yorktown. Now coming up here on the right are trophies of war. These are captured original British artillery from the battle. Various calibers and sizes, mortars, howitzers, guns. And on each one they've inscribed that this is a piece captured in the surrender here at Yorktown. We'll try to find a better inscription. Yeah, you can see there, surrendered by the capitulation of Yorktown, October 1781.
I love seeing the crown on there. God save the king.
Well, I think we should.
Oh, sorry, I'm a parliamentarian as well, so I should be saying a pox on the king, but there you go. Don't tell Oliver.
As we continue.
And this is actually, ironically, I don't know why I bring up the identification there, the surrendered by capitulation, would not have obviously been on the gun that was engraved later, but the GR, the Great Britain symbol there, and then the crown on top, that would have been. And to be honest, this is the only 6-pounder here. The others are much larger naval guns or mortars.
And again, these are
This is my favorite one.
Original,
These are original. These were here in surrender.
mortars and guns, yeah. Cool. So if we want to wrap it up here.
Yeah, I was gonna say we get him actually walking surrender field for a minute. We got
let's
it.
do it.
And then we can come back here. We'll wrap it up. We get back to the
footsteps
shade.
of doom.
Yeah, footsteps of doom.
But what I will say, this is not the end for the British, because from this, right, we're gonna forget about losing the 13 colonies, because to be honest with you, they're weighing us down anyway, and Britain is going to turn into this massive superpower and take over the world anyway. So we don't need you guys. I'm only joking, love you really, but no, we're gonna conquer half the known world, and the British Empire. This is not the height of the British Empire. This is just the start, and after this, Britain is going to prosper. So there we go. And hopefully I didn't offend anyone. It's sort of like
Gary could
goosebump
probably
moment.
answer this question. In the 18th century, so around the time of King George, does the king have any more power than the monarchy does today?
No. So it's practically the same. It's the same sort of power. The king loses his power when King Charles I loses his head. That's it. The power is never going to be the same. So in 1649, when King Charles I loses his head, that's the king's power gone. In charge of the country is Parliament. The king has like now. No, I mean, if Parliament want to pass something, they have to go and see the Queen first. But it doesn't matter what she says really. They can do what they want. They're in charge. You know, it's more of a
Respect.
respect type thing. You know, so the power will never be the same. The minute that axe falls down on King Charles I's head, that's it. It's gone. There will never be power like that again. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, because there was always a lot of blame, you know. I wonder, the colonists had to have known that. So why? I always questioned why all the petitions to the king. Maybe it's because he has influence.
It's that status, you know.
Yeah.
He's still technically. I mean, like the Queen now. She is head of the British Army, the British Navy, the British Air Force. She is head of that, you know. So.
Motivational?
Yeah, but she is head of state, you know. But again, it's just not, they haven't got that power to be able to decide the real decisions. That's down to people in Westminster. Sorry. I will say again, this is actually goosebump moment for me, because this is like, I've never been here before and I'm actually overwhelmed by it a little bit. So
Sure.
Yeah, carry on.
And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and log off from our Yorktown live today. And remember, we are not done with today, because this afternoon we'll be live at Jamestown. So for Darren, this is kind of a closure of a story from England when the British come over here and fight and the United States is created. But where we're going to go instead of a closure is more of a beginning. I'm sure you know the story of Jamestown, 1607. Some English colonists find their way into what would be known as Virginia. And we have 50 U.S. states and a few territories later. So we'll talk a little bit about that as soon as we see you guys at
And we're going to finish with a formal surrender. There you go. Well, I'll go home. See you later.